Uh, I'm excited. I'm excited because this morning we're going to talk about three areas of stewardship. Three areas of stewardship. And I know what you're thinking, right? Great. He's going to talk about money, right? Because 9 out of 10 times, probably even more than that, when somebody in church uses the word stewardship, right? Immediately following is going to be somebody telling us that we need to give more, right? Right? Okay? Nope? Okay. Good. Well, I'm glad that you're not expecting that because that's not really what stewardship's all about. In fact, if we always think of stewardship as simply a money thing, we're doing ourselves a disservice. We're doing God a disservice because we're really selling this whole idea of stewardship short. And stewardship shouldn't be a scary word either. A lot of times we think of it as a scary word because, you know what? It means like we have to be accountable to something, right? And we like to shy away from accountability, or we have to manage. It means doing something, right? It's like an action, and well, we got plenty on our plate already. Now I have to be a steward. But I want to define what stewardship is, and just look in the dictionary. Stewardship is an ethic that embodies the responsible planning and management of resources. Okay? 2 takeaways: responsible planning and management. Okay? Responsible planning and management. Now, again, you heard the word resources, and you're like, great, he's still talking about money, right? No. If we do the same thing with the word resources, we're selling ourselves short again, aren't we? This resources, it's a word that means this: a place or thing that provides something useful. Something useful. A place or thing that provides something useful. A supply of something, and this is funny, in parentheses, such as money, that someone has and can use when it's needed. Okay? That's what resource means. So all of this is great, right? But then we have the question that we should answer this one. Are we stewards? Are we stewards? The answer is yes. We are stewards. A lot of times when we read in the Bible, we think of stewardship as maybe even an Old Testament thing. Well, there were stewards of things. Those were the servants, the people working for somebody else as a steward. But really, what's taking place, and when we look in Galatians chapter 4, verse 7, it says this: "Wherefore thou art no more a servant, but a son and daughter. And if a son, then an heir of God through Christ." So now we have become no longer servants, but we're sons and daughters. Amen? That's a good thing. We've moved from eating in the kitchen the leftovers to sitting at the table with the Father. Okay? We're at the dinner table with the main course. Okay? But that hasn't changed the fact that we're still stewards. Just because we've changed our relationship to the Father from being a servant to sons and daughters, our responsibility of stewardship hasn't changed. We're still stewards. We're stewards of the resources that God has entrusted us. But what are those resources He's entrusted us with? I think there's 3 major areas. And so this morning, when we talk about these 3 areas of stewardship, it's not a comprehensive list, okay? And they're not done in any particular order. A lot of times, when we see things, we read things in the Bible, we think the first one's always important, right? We're like, oh, here's a list of things, here's, A, B, C, D, and we're like, oh, this one must be the most important one, right? That not necessarily the case either, because the Bible also says the last shall be first, right? But, bless you. But this list, it's just three major areas, I believe, that we are called to be stewards of and to manage responsibly. The first one, the first area of stewardship is our health. I want to start there. Our health. Our health is so important. Many times we neglect this area. And sometimes we neglect it so much it can actually cause harm to us, right? I mean, I've been there. Like, I'm just so busy, I just keep on going and going and going. And my body continues to run down until I hit a wall, right? And then what happens in our immune system almost, it's like it's working so hard that, you can get sick, right? Because you've been working so hard and pushing your body so much, you now have caused harm to it because you haven't taken the time to rest and manage your health. Even like sleep. Sleep is so vitally important to our bodies, but sometimes we just want to neglect sleep, right? I got too much to do. I got to keep on doing. I got to keep on doing. But then all of a sudden, because we kept on doing, now we're out for a couple days because our body pretty much shut down, right? So we got to make sure that we're managing this appropriately. God only gave us one body, right? That might be news for some of you. I hope not. That'd be weird. But we need to be responsible with it. We need to take care of it. It can be easy for us to simply say, well, I'm going to live by faith. And while that sounds like a really great response, a lot of times what we mean is that I'm too afraid to actually pay attention to what this might be saying, and so I'm going to just act like it's not there, right? And that's me walking by faith when it actually means that I'm just simply walking by fear because I'm afraid of what I might find out. We can't live that way. We can't live that way. A lot of times we'll elude accountability and responsibility of our health. And we'll give a really good Christian answer that makes us feel good, right? On why we're not taking care of ourselves. But we have to be responsible and manage our health. And here's another thing. There's nothing inherently wrong with doctors or the medical profession, right? There isn't. A lot of times we want to be afraid of them because they might tell us maybe some of the facts or truths of what's actually happening in the body, right? But it's just facts and truth in which we can now apply our faith to, right? It's like if we were standing outside and there was a 10-mile-an-hour wind, and we say, well, there's a 10-mile-an-hour wind. Science tells us that. We can have something there that tells us that the wind is blowing at 10 miles an hour. But if we say we just don't believe that, that doesn't change the fact that the wind is still blowing 10 miles an hour, right? But listen, sometimes, and I understand that people feel like maybe the medical profession is corrupted, right? So we can't rely on it. It's corrupted. And so then we push ourselves maybe into alternative type of care. But at the same time, if we're afraid of corruption because we say that the medical profession is corrupted, there's plenty of churches across America that have corruption as well. And we can't be afraid of churches, can we? Right? And at the same time, I know I feel like I'm going off a little bit on this whole medical profession thing. But if we continue to alienate the medical professionals in this world, they're going to continue to get pushed away from the church. And that doesn't seem to make sense. Especially when we have a God who chose a doctor to write a gospel and wrote the book of Acts on top of it. I mean, where would we be without doctors when it came to the Gospel of Luke? When it comes to the book of Acts, where would we be without a doctor? And so it's important that we understand what truly doctors are simply telling us when it comes to managing our health, right? Because it goes beyond, even having a simple checkup. It's okay to do that, right? Again, you only have one body to manage. One body. That's all you have. You have one shot with this body, right? That's what you got. And so we got to be responsible with it. We got to manage it. That doesn't mean that we simply live by fear. And now all of a sudden we're so afraid of eating the wrong foods that we're always trapped in a prison of trying to figure out what I can eat and what I can't eat and what I have to do. That's not living either, okay? Living is enjoying life, right? That's what living is. You got to enjoy life. okay? The one thing that I've said is that if you're afraid of eating something, then don't eat it, right? So if you have like in your head, right? And you know, you have all of these people saying do this and don't do this and eat this and don't eat this, right? There comes a time where we just have to live again. Right? We do. We do. We just have to, you know what? There's so much fear out there. We can't live by fear, especially when it comes to our health. Especially when it comes to our health. And so that's the first area that I wanted to talk about, was our health, okay? It's our health. We only have one body. We have to manage it appropriately. We have to take care of ourselves. God gave us this body to be useful, right, in this world that we live in. The second thing, the second area of responsibility that I see is really relationships. Relationships. I'm not talking about specific people, but that relationship. What's in between you and that other person? That's the relationship. And how we manage that is so important. And it's not limited when we talk about stewarding relationships and when we talk about the relationships that God's given us, right? I'm not simply talking about, Christian relationships, but also non-Christian relationships, right? He's brought people to your life that may believe the same thing, but they also might not believe the same thing. But God still brought them to you, right? There's still a relationship there. And there's a reason why. There's a purpose why God brought them into your life. And you know what? He loves them just as much as He loves you, right? I think a lot of times it's easy for us to think that, well, He loves Christians more. He loves us all. God so loved the world, right? That was before there were Christians. He loved the entire world. It's crazy to think. But He loves all of us. So we need to start seeing our relationships, these relationships that God has brought us. We need to start seeing them as an opportunity. Not as an opportunity to receive, but an opportunity to give. If we only look at the people around us as an opportunity to receive something, we will never give. We'll never steward that relationship the right way. We'll start discounting the people that aren't giving enough to us, and we'll only emphasize those around us that are giving the most into our life at the time. But yet God has given all of these relationships to us. I think the best analogy when it comes to stewarding relationships, the best way to see it is the picture of a flower in a garden. You plant that flower. You take care of that flower. You water it, right? You make sure you're managing it. And here's the thing about flowers. There is nothing they're really giving back to you. It's not like a fruit tree where you can actually get fruit from it, or you can get something and receive something. The only thing that a flower does for us is provide beauty. It provides beauty. Start seeing our relationships as these flowers that provide beauty to our lives, that we give to. We keep on giving and giving and giving. Not receiving, but giving. That should be our focus when it comes to these relationships in our lives. How can I give into this? Put my time into it. Not, this person isn't giving me what I need. It's not the right way, right? Because a flower's not giving you anything except beauty. Amen? And so it's important to see it that way. And for me, when it comes to relationships, it's important to have your priorities right in life. And so, for me, it goes God, it goes my wife, Then it's my kids, right? Then it's my family outside of my immediate family. And then it goes into my friends. And then a distant 6 is my work, okay? A distant 6. Because those other things are the things that really matter, are these relationships. These relationships, okay? And for a time, I personally had them a little out of order, okay? My priorities, my relationship priorities. I had, and just being transparent, and I think transparency is extremely important for the growth of others, right? And so I had God and vocation at the same place, okay? Or you could say God, vocation, then I had my wife, then I had my kids, my family, my friends. And it's really easy when you're in ministry to do that. It really is. I've talked to a lot of people that had this issue happen in their life. Because what happens with a minister, just to explain it and be transparent, is that they're praying and they feel that God is telling them to do something. They feel like, hey, this is what I need to do. And so then you share it with your spouse, and the spouse says, I don't know about that. Well, if your priorities are wrong, what has taken place is that you've elevated what you have to do because God told you what you have to do ahead of your spouse. God didn't design it that way, right? Because if you do that, issues are going to start coming. The rest of the priorities, everybody else in that line of priorities, there's going to be some problems, there's going to be some schism, because you've married what you do and your relationship with God together, and you've put your spouse into a third place position, right? And so what takes place, just to explain this idea a little further for you, is that if God tells you something that you feel like you're called to do, you feel like that's what I need to do, okay? Your spouse, God gave you, okay? He knows what He's doing. He gave you that person to be somebody who will help you with that. And so if you feel like you're supposed to be doing this one thing and the spouse says, I don't know, this just doesn't seem right, wait. God's a big God, okay? And He can bring that either use your spouse to help you, right? Wait and do it at the right time, right? Minister to that person to make sure you're both aligned, right? But simply just pushing through and barreling through, right, is the wrong approach. Because that person there is bringing confirmation to you. God is using them to bring confirmation. Does that make sense? To move forward. He wants to bring both of you, not just one of you. He doesn't want to leave anybody behind, right? And here's the thing. What if you're wrong, right? And you wait, and then you find out you're wrong, and that's fine. Now that person has helped you with that, right? So anyways, that's relationships, stewarding relationships, especially the ones closest to you, are so vitally important. And remembering that God brought them to you, okay? God brought them to you. The third thing that I want to talk about, as far as an area, you guessed it, we finally got to the money part, right? We got to money. But notice that I put it the third thing, okay? I really think that those first two are so important. Money can come at a third place position, right? If money is more important than the relationships in your life, you have a problem, right? Right? So I want to talk about money, and I want us to look at this parable of the talents, Matthew 25, starting in verse 14. And so in Matthew 25, starting in verse 14, and this is out of the NIV version, just because I thought it was funny because instead of saying talents, it said bags of gold. That sounded cool. It says this, verse 14, "Again, it'll be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth with them." He entrusted these resources with them. They're stewarding these resources. Verse 15, "To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money." Verse 19. "After a long time," not a short time, a long time, "the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. 'Master,' he said, 'you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more.' His master replied, 'Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness.'" Verse 22, "The man with 2 bags of gold also came. 'Master,' he said, 'you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more.' His master replied, 'Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness.' Verse 24, "Then the man who had received only 1 bag of gold came. 'Master,' he said, 'I knew that you are a hard man.'" So he was afraid. "Harvesting where you have not sown." That's interesting. "And gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you." His master replied, "You wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered. Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth," which sounds absolutely terrifying, doesn't it? But here's the point that I think we need to take away from all of that story. Is that this servant, this one servant, the one who only received 1 bag of gold, he hid it in the ground. He hid the bag of gold. What does that mean? He put it out of his sight. He didn't want to pay attention to it. He didn't want to manage it. He was afraid of messing up. He was afraid of screwing up. So instead of doing any of that, instead of managing and taking the responsibility of at least putting it into the bank and getting some interest, he hid it away so he didn't have to even see it. Right? He buried it in the ground. So for us, even when we look at stewardship with those 2 other areas that we talked about, how many times do we simply want to hide those things away from us? How many times do we want to simply bury those relationships in the ground? That was a joke, as you want to kill him and bury him in the ground. It's a little too early, I understand. Maybe you weren't expecting that from me. That's fine. But how many times do we want to hide? Maybe, even our health from ourselves. We want to hide the responsibility. I don't want to see it because that means I'll have to be accountable and take care of it. I'd rather just not know. And that's what he did with his money. He just rather just not know. He was so scared of messing up, so scared to manage it. He was so overwhelmed. It reminds me of sometimes like files at work, right? That if you don't take care of the files and you're just like, oh, it's so overwhelming, I'm just going to put this off. What happens? They do not go away. There's only more files, right? There's only more papers. There's only more bills that keep on piling up until you finally do it. Until you finally just say, okay, fine. We'll do this. We'll step out. We'll do this. And here's the thing. Philippians 4:19 says this. And this is where we shouldn't be so afraid of managing our finances. We shouldn't be so afraid of taking care of the money that's been entrusted to us. Philippians 4:19 says this, my God shall supply all my needs according to his riches and glory. He'll take care of us. He'll take care of us. Simply because of who he is. That's why. His character of who God is. That's why he's going to take care of you because of who he is. The last thing I want to share on all of this, because I think a lot of times we don't steward what God has given us simply because we're afraid. Because we are perhaps a little lazy, because it means that I won't be able to do some of these other things that I want to do. Maybe you're not going to be able to play video games. Probably only spoke to me. And Corey. Thank you. I know how it is. There's sometimes I just want to put off some of these things that I should be managing so I can just sit on the couch, turn on the PS4, and play a game. Right? Nope, not you? Okay. Yeah. Corey's way above that. But listen, that's just an analogy. There's things in all of our lives that we would rather do than manage or take responsibility for something that we know that we should do, right? It happens all the time. It happens all the time. But I want to share something. If it might be the fear, whatever it might be, fear of losing out, whatever it is, I want to share this quote. I shared it last night. It's a short quote, and it's about chess. It's about chess. And we need to keep this in the context of life, okay? When I read this, I want you to think about life, because this is so true about life. Each possible move in chess represents a different game, a different universe in which you make a better move. By the second move, there are 72,084 different games of chess that could come out of whatever that is so far. That's the second move. And get this, by the third move, you would think there would be less games. By the third move, there is 90 million different games that could be played. It goes from 72,000 to 90 million. That's the third move, right? Moving. Not staying where you're at, not staying in the safe place, but moving and taking steps. By the fourth move, there's 318 million different games of chess. Different games of chess. There are more possible games of chess than atoms in the universe. No one could possibly predict them all, not even you. Which means that the first move can be terrifying. The first move can be terrifying. Let's stop for a second. The first move of you beginning to manage and being a steward of these areas can be terrifying because of all of the loss that you could see. But here's the thing. Getting back to the quote. It can be terrifying because it's the furthest point from the end of the game, is that first move. There is virtually a sea of possibilities between you and the other side. But it also means that if you make a mistake, there is nearly an infinite amount of ways to fix it. To fix it. So you should simply relax and play. That's life. That is life. That's the life that we have. That's the God that we serve, is a God of infinite possibilities for us. You screw up, infinite possibilities to fix it. He has that. But yet, for some reason, our minds want to always go to the negative, doesn't it? I messed up. This is going to haunt me forever, right? No. Infinite amount of possibilities to fix it. And not only that, elevate you to the next place in life. Every move you make, there's even more opportunity. Every step you take, there's more opportunity. Every time that you take a step to manage your finances, right? To manage your money, to manage your relationships, to manage your health, you're taking that step to do that, there's even more opportunity after that step. And as you keep on pursuing to be a good steward in these areas, there's more and more and more opportunity and possibilities for you. But there is nothing if we don't move. There's nothing. Absolutely nothing. So let's move. Let's play. Amen? Let's be good stewards. 2016 is going to be a great year. Let's steward these areas that God's given us to a new height, a new level, because there are so many opportunities for us this year if we just simply move. Amen? Amen. Well, let's